Good morning to viewers and welcome to a brand new week as we bring you Economy and Politics Show, where we bring you developments in the economic space as it relates to policy, investments, trade, and how this impacts the populace. Today, October 12th, 2020, we'll be looking at the budget 2021 again. We're not tired of looking at the budget because it's going to be assessed by the National Assembly and it will be definitely passed and signed into law by the President. Budget 2021 was presented to the joint session of the National Assembly on Thursday last week and is christened the Budget of Economic Recovery and Resilience. President Muhammadu Buhari, since he took over the reins of office, has done that tradition of always presenting the budget to the National Assembly. The mandate of this particular budget 2021, which is estimated at 13.08 trillion naira, is to deliver on the government's economic sustainability plan goals, accelerate the pace of Nigeria's economic recovery, promote economic diversification, enhance competitiveness, and ensure social inclusion. But as we go on, apart from the budget 2021 today, we'll also be looking at developments in the nation. And one very important issue that has been up throughout last week has been the activities of the formation in the Nigerian police force, the FSARS, the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. There has been a lot of protests last week, and that led to a reaction from the presidency, which of course we would be discussing in the course of the program. Let's go on to the budget again. Like we said earlier, it was presented last week, Thursday, October 8, 2020. And it brought together, of course, all the joint session of the National Assembly. In terms of the parameters of the budget, just for the records again, the benchmark oil price is $40 per barrel. Daily oil production estimate is 1.86 million barrels per day, inclusive of the condensates, which are 300,000 to 400,000 barrels per day. If you combine, they're expecting about 700,000 barrels per day. Exchange rate is pegged at 379 naira to a dollar. The gross domestic product growth, the GDP growth of the country, is targeting 3%. Inflation is estimated to close at 11.95%. And so definitely we know that when budgets are rolled out like this, it calls for a lot of reflection. But let's look at the additional information we have from this budget. The total revenue estimate is 7.896 trillion naira. Oil revenue is projected at 2.01 trillion naira, while non-oil revenue is estimated at 1.49 trillion naira. Grants and aid of 354.85 billion naira is estimated, as well as the revenues of 60 government-owned enterprises. What about the fiscal balance? The 2021 budget deficit, inclusive of government-owned enterprises and project-tied loans, is projected at 5.20 trillion naira. This represents 3.64% of estimated gross domestic product, slightly above the 3% threshold set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. The deficit, according to the President, will be financed mainly by new borrowings, totaling 4.28 trillion naira. 205.15 billion naira will come from privatization proceeds, and 709.69 billion naira will come from drawdowns on multilateral and bilateral loans secured for specific projects and programs. Now let's look at costs for budget 2021. Non-debt recurrent costs will go at 5.65 trillion naira. Yes, that's what we're getting from that. The personnel cost will go for 3.76 trillion naira. Pensions, gratuities, and retirees' benefits will go at 501.19 billion naira. Overheads of 625.50 billion naira is what will be laid out, while debt servicing will go at 3.124 trillion naira. Statutory transfers of 484.49 billion naira is the experience that we're going to monitor, and of course the sinking fund of 220 billion naira would be deployed to retire certain maturing bonds. In terms of statutory transfers, the sum of 494.49 billion naira has been provided for statutory transfers in the 2021 budget, which represents an increase of 56.46 billion naira, or 13% over the revised 2020 provision. The statutory transfer provisions are the Niger Delta Development Commission, which has 63.51 billion naira, the Northeast Development Commission, which has 29.70 billion naira, the National Judicial Council, which has 110 billion naira, the Universal Basic Education Commission, which has 70.05 billion naira, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, which has 40 billion naira. The National Assembly is getting 128 billion naira. The National Assembly always getting some huge chunk, while the Public Complaints Commission has 5.20 billion naira. The Human Rights Commission has 3 billion naira, while Basic Healthcare Provision Fund has 35.03 billion naira. We'll go on a breather, and when we return, we're going to give you some comparisons of this current budget 2021.
Welcome to this year's Champions of Talent Development. In this year's event, we will be talking about building new pathways. Why are we talking about building new pathways? We are talking about building new pathways because the pandemic has created an almost 360 degrees change in the way we relate. So the business of learning and development have also been affected. The business of education has also been affected. So the business of training delivery has also been affected. Indeed, the business of business have also been affected. So what are we saying? We are saying that you should join us at this year's conference, which is taking place from October 14th to 15th, right here in Nigeria, beamed globally for the world to see. Who are our speakers? When you register for this event, you will be able to meet Professor Ottoabasi Abasiekong, who happens to be one of our keynote speakers for this year's conference. You will also be able to meet Sadek Law from the US, Brian Combry from Canada. You will also be able to meet Andrea Cynthia. This year's event, we have nearly 50 speakers talking to you. So it's important you are a part of this. Imagine 50 speakers in 2 days. The choice is yours. 50 speakers, 8 tracks. What are the tracks we are looking at? The tracks we are looking at include change, management, and readiness, training, delivery, and facilitation. We also have a track for the public sector, because they are a very important group. That's where policy is made, that's where execution also takes place of policy. So we are also focusing on how will the business of talent development, or the business of learning and development, even the business of education, how will it change in the new path that we are growing? We're also going to be looking at leadership development issues. We're also going to be looking at instructional design. A whole gamut of 8 tracks, 50 speakers, global leaders and experts in their field. Some of the local names you will be having opportunity to engage with are Emmanuel Michael, Yemi Fashion, Wale Adeniro, who happens to be the president of Charities of Personnel Management of Nigeria. They will be talking to us. And we will have the honor of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Oyo State, Mr. Seyi Makinde, will also be talking to us. So we are looking forward to have you come talk with them. I will be there to welcome you. Here is a one-time event. For the first time, not just in Nigeria, in Africa, we are bringing together learning and development experts, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, business leaders, policymakers, people in government to come and talk to us so that we can build the new pathways together for a better Nigeria, a better Africa, and a better world. I'm going to be there to welcome you. See you there.
Welcome back. Now let's give you a comparison of the 2021 budget to the previous budget of 2020 in terms of how it's laid out in the parameters. And this is courtesy of KPMG Professional Services firm, which this was published on ProShare, Nigeria's leading financial information hub. First, for the oil price benchmark, crude oil price benchmark, in 2020, the approved initial budget had a benchmark of $57 per barrel. But the 2020 revised budget due to COVID-19 pegged it at $28 per barrel. And currently now we're seeing a $40 per barrel estimate. And so in terms of percentage change, that is 43%. For oil production volumes, 2020 initial budget was 2.18 million barrels per day. And then the revised budget due to COVID-19 disruptions brought it to 1.8 million barrels per day. And then the one for 2021 is now pegged at 1.86 million barrels per day, showing a different a percentage change of 3%. In terms of inflation, the 2020 approved budget had 10.81% targeted inflation. Of course, the COVID-19 revised budget had 14% targeted inflation, and now the current estimate for 2021 is 11.95%, showing a minus 15% change. In terms of exchange rates, as a 2020 budget estimate, it was 305 naira to a dollar, and then the revised budget had 360 naira to a dollar, and while the current 2021 estimate is 279 naira to a dollar, that's 5% change. For the GDP growth estimate, it was 2.93% in 2020. 2020 revised budget had minus 4.42% growth, but now it's showing a 3% audacious growth target, 168% change in terms of estimates, and that is for that. In terms of capital expenditure, the 2020 approved budget had 2.47 trillion naira. Revised budgets due to COVID had 2.69 trillion naira, while the current estimate is 3.85 trillion naira, which makes it 43% change in terms of the comparison. Statutory transfers had zero, that's 560 billion naira in approved budget for 2020. Revised budget saw 430 billion naira, while currently it's 480 billion naira for 2021, a percentage change of 13%. For debt servicing, 2.43 trillion naira was the estimate for the 2020 budget. 2.68 trillion naira was what was revised to due to the COVID disruption, and currently the debt servicing has gone a bit high to 3.12 trillion naira, which is 16% change. Recurrent expenditure was 4.49 trillion naira for 2020 budget. 2020 revised budget saw 4.94 trillion naira, and for 2021, it's 5.65 trillion naira, showing you a 14% change. In terms of revenue, which is very important, Nigeria faces a revenue challenge. The total revenue estimates for year 2020 budget was 8.42 trillion naira. Revised due to the COVID disruptions, cut it down to 5.84 trillion naira. And we're back up with an ambitious 8.43 trillion naira revenue for the year 2021, and that's 44% change. Total expenditure in terms of the size of the budget, it was 10.59 trillion naira, as at the initially approved one was for 2020, and revised as 10.8 trillion naira was approved 2020, then the revised was 10.5 trillion naira, and now we have 13.08 trillion naira for 2021. That's 21%. And then the one that is of huge interest to most of us here is the fiscal deficit, because the deficit is always something that has to be monitored. Now, the deficit of 2020 initial budget was 2.17 trillion naira. It was cut down, it was increased to 4.98 trillion naira because of the COVID revisions, and now it's 4.65 trillion naira, minus 7% change in terms of that regard. This is sourced from the Ministry of Budget and National Planning in terms of authenticity of this comparison. Just shows you some aspects that needs to be looked at. For me, the recurrent expenditure, the debt servicing is still a concern. The capital expenditure needs to increase, but I mean, we need to run a budget that is pro capital expenditure while we find ways to really finance the budget. So definitely those are things of interest for experts and analysts. Let's get on to the next big thing that's happened throughout last week. It had been reactions to the excesses of what we call the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Protests across the country, and this led to the directive from the President, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, that the Special Anti-Robbery Squad be officially dissolved with effect from yesterday, October 11, 2020. Now, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Mohammed Adamu, had disclosed this development yesterday in a live briefing via social media platform monitored across all channels. The IGP appreciated and commended all citizens, particularly those who genuinely expressed their concerns for better policing orientation in an organized, patriotic, and civil manner. To this effect, the following steps were agreed on and approved in this regard. First is the dissolution of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, covering all the states' commands across 36 states of the Federation. The next major decision step was all officers and men serving in the FSARS will now be redeployed to other units in the police force. And then a new policing arrangement for tackling the offenses of armed robberies and other violent crimes will be unveiled to the public very soon. A Citizen and Strategic Stakeholders Forum will be launched to provide an avenue for citizens to regularly interface and advise the police authority on issues touching on the general public. And then, of course, to deal with the report of crimes committed against citizens, an investigative team will be constituted, which will include the civil society and organizations and culprits who will be punished. The measure, the IGP believes, will enhance transparency and accountability in police service, as well as provide a system of deterrence for erring police officers whose action clearly violates the rights of the citizenry. This step and action yesterday was in response to massive protests across the country, and kudos to the entire youth across the country, celebrities. I mean, it shows you how powerful the millennials, Gen Zs are in terms of bringing change to the country. They condemned the spate of brutality, extortion, rape, and murder of innocent citizens and suspects by several officers of the FSARS formation. The IGP is expected to have further consultations with CSOs and other stakeholders on the next key steps that will be taken to entrench the new directive concerning FSARS. In reaction to this decision by the presidency and the Inspector of Police, 7 agents commended the youths who stood their ground to protest and demand the disbandment of FSARS units. They also lauded the President and the Inspector of Police for taking the right step in dissolving FSARS, but there is a general call for more clarity on the plans of redeploying the FSARS officers to other police commands, formations, and units. For records, FSARS was formed in 1992, and since inception has been plagued with petitions of brutality, abuse of citizens, illegal operations, and widespread violation of the fundamental human rights of Nigerians. While we commend everyone, there are some key concerns in terms of this. I mean, we pay tributes to several youths who protested and were killed, particularly in areas of like Ogbomoso, those in Abuja who were harassed, even in Lagos, some slight cases of that. We pay tribute to all of them, and we hope that there will be much better engagement between the police and citizens as it comes to peaceful protest. The key concerns here are the redeployment of all officers in the FSARS formation. It requires more clarity, and yes, this is where the Ministry of Police Affairs and Police Service Commission will need to come in. to really, really set the efficiency of this process. There needs to be a thorough audit of the FSARS police officers before redeployment in terms of how many FSARS police officers do we have in the country? What's the audit of that? And which formation will they be assigned to? What are the orientation plans in place before they get to that formation? Then the suggestions that the entire police force should be reformed and remodeled to serve the nation better. What will be the timeline for that? And does the IGP believe that it is time for this to happen alongside the presidency? Also, all police cells that have been used by FSARS, they will need to audit them and assess their current state. In a nutshell, it's the time to really open up the whole FSARS activity and look at what happened, the roads, and how they were addressed. For Nigerians, it will interest you to know that there's a Police Service Commission. Yes, there is. And we want this Police Service Commission to be empowered to carry out their roles of effective supervision and monitoring of activities of police officers effectively, because it has become very important. There's need to ascertain if the FSARS, before disbandment, had verifiable records of all arrests that have been carried out, because there are several cases of people that have been arrested, but unfortunately, we've not been able to account for many. There's also a very interesting list of several people that have been killed under detention by FSARS. In a communique, in our coverage, it was agreed that there should be a level of compensation to all those who have been killed or abused or harassed as a result of FSARS activities. It is a very clear statement that the citizens are awake to their rights and responsibilities, and that government shouldn't wait until it gets to a very tense moment before they take steps and actions. 2 years ago, there was a statement and a directive, but it wasn't followed. It shows again the gap between policy statements, implementation, and the outcomes. And for a very sensitive and very strategic security force like the police, it has become imperative that we reform. So the big question is, as we want to reform, the question of restructuring comes again. Do we need state policing? Because if you have state policing, states will account for the activities of their police operations. How can we improve policing in a way that is pro-citizen and is more of intelligence in terms of approach, and is also more of data-driven approach? And in terms of welfare, it is an issue that is valued. Infrastructure for the police force, from their police colleges to their research centers to their various logistics and operation zones. What is the thinking of an average police officer? Are they happy in terms of carrying out their activities, and are they valued? What has been the condition of police officers that have died? Have they been well catered for and their families? What is the clear condition of all police barracks across the country? We commend this administration for the Police Trust Fund, which of course, Lagos State has taken the lead in having the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. All states definitely need to have that Security Trust Fund. Police need to be equipped. Their welfare needs to be taken seriously. Their salary package has to be reviewed effectively. And this is where the Ministry of Police Affairs and the Police Service Commission and the Office of the Inspector General of Police have to work closely to ensure that all the formations in the police force work in tandem to safeguard lives and also ensure that the country is rid of crime and armed robbery. But there are some units that also will need standard commendation. For example, the Rapid Response Squad, RRS. They are examples of police forces formations that are doing well, that are supporting citizens, that carry out their roles effectively, and have low incidence cases of brutality and violation of human rights. So, we're not saying the police is bad. No, the police formations are effective, the trainings are great, but we need to rework the whole process to make the police serve the nation better. Secure Nigeria, definitely we can implement the budget, we can have people alive and happy to carry out their activities without fear or terror. That's where we expect Nigeria to be, and hopefully we expect a robust reform as we continue the engagement with the police force. But we just want to appeal to security forces and the police that, yes, in this week, as peaceful additional protests may go on, the use of force, live bullets, should not come into play, because the lives of every Nigerian matters. That will be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can visit our website, www.prochange.com, to watch our videos, read our news reports and stories, and get further insight on the budget 2021. You have questions or comments around this budget 2021, you can send them to news@prochange.com. We will be glad to receive them and then respond appropriately to you.